Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Metaphysical Egypt. I'm Allan Peoples with Patricia on Lehman. Today we're talking about the Matrix.
Yeah, on so many different levels, because we're all familiar with the movie called The Matrix. But we're going to introduce a whole new way of thinking about the Matrix, because you know, any tool, anything that exists is just a thing that exists, and how it's used is how we can judge it as being positive or negative, masculine or feminine, you know, good or bad. So yeah, the Matrix.
My first thought is the word matrix itself means womb.
Well, there we go. Hey, you're right on the right track, because that's what we're going to talk about. It is the womb, most definitely. So today we're going to start out talking about a Netert, and when I say Netert, that's feminine Netert. The masculine is always just Neter, and they add the T at the end to make it feminine. Today we're going to talk about the force of nature called Neith or Neat or Knit. She is the net. And almost, you know, we talk about the internet, we talk about fish nets. In fact, we'll see all over Egypt when they display the fishing nets or the, you know, netting, bird netting, you know, to net and catch birds. They are symbolically often referring to this matrix, the womb that basically is the fabric of our reality. So Sais, some of you are familiar with Sais in the Delta here in Egypt, was known to be a place wherein many secrets were held. Unfortunately, it's been practically totally destroyed, and you have to wonder why. But it was an incredibly enigmatic place, and a place where, boy, I'd love to have been able to see it in its, or you know, maybe I was there, but yeah. But it was also known to be the place of Neith, and yes, she does represent the fabric of our reality. Her name, this is from Plutarch, her name may also be interpreted as meaning water. In time, this meaning led to her being considered as the personification of the primordial waters of creation. She is identified as a great mother goddess in this role as a creator. So again, there you go, Allan. There is her function as a womb. And in front of us, you can see in the middle picture is her dress that she's wearing. You can see it on the far left as well. And you can see that it's made up of this matrix of these hexagons, which is the same pattern as the beehive.
Which is the same pattern as the flower of life.
Exactly, exactly. So there you go. We have this understanding of this fractal holographic matrix as the womb of our perception of reality itself. So yeah, she is, I mentioned that Hathor can say this. We hear Isis saying it, and we hear it also given, this phrase is also associated with Neith. I am all that has been, that is, and that will be. No mortal has been yet been able to lift the veil that covers me. And again, this is an electromagnetic matrix of light waves, waveform. She's also known as the Queen Bee, of course. So she is the queen of the heavens who provides a safe haven for seeds of consciousness to be birthed into the rhythmic dance of life. And what's so interesting about honeybees is they do orient themselves to the Earth's magnetic field. They contain a region of ferromagnetic crystals of magnetite located in the front of their abdomens that enable them to detect magnetic fields, to regulate their internal clocks, and to guide them as they build combs within the hive. Fascinating, isn't it? It's been suggested that the queen bee harnesses the magnetic field to promote a harmonic and unified communal effort to create and maintain her domain and its inhabitants in a state of ma'at.
This is unity consciousness.
Exactly. Because you hear about the worker bees, and they all, you know, basically she's the driving force behind the worker bees. But what's fascinating is that concept that she's the great architect in this respect, right? driving force behind what they're creating. But again, as a tool, this can be used for good or bad. And here we have that theme of the movie, The Matrix. Is the Matrix, it can be a tool that's used for positive, and on another level, there's a matrix that can be used in a negative way. Let's stick to the positive, though, for now. So what's interesting, if you look at her headdress, it's quite an interesting and, again, enigmatic symbol that many different archaeologists, Egyptologists talk about, and no one can really come to an agreement on what it represents. And that symbol also exists in the cobra that you see. You see the beautiful gold cobra. Now you can't see, unfortunately, this symbol. You can see it on the middle picture a little bit. And notice how the cobra, I've shown this headdress before, and I'm going to show it again and again, but the back of the cobra does a sine wave pattern on the place where the crown would go over the head.
Mm-hmm.
So again, this is waveform. And on the breast of the cobra, you actually see this same symbol that's on Neith. And it dawned on me as I was looking at it that this symbol is basically the integral part of the torus field. And I'm going to show you how that works as we move forward. But just listen to this understanding of the torus field as it forms due to the duality within the cosmic egg. All of what we perceive as creation exists because of the first torus. Now, we've heard this before, and we've even talked about it before. The thunder caused by the friction of the two innate polarities uniting within the egg is the original sound that created the spark of life. The body of the cobra above in the middle image would have been zigzagging across the top of the head of the diadem's wearer to and from the left and right sides of the brain. That spark, as the first breath, is personified as the Netert who represents the illusion of linear time, and therefore space as the yin-yang motion of the cosmic serpent as a sine wave. So again, you can see another expression of this. Hu was the personification of the divine utterance or sound as the word of God. So here we have, the womb creating our perception of time and space as related to the torus field. This is powerful imagery, and it seems like I'm going through it fast. But we're going to keep expanding on this because it is hugely significant what all of this means. Because that cobra, which basically is emerging from the third eye, right, on its placement on the crown, it's also connected to your kundalini energy that's rising through the body.
Exactly.
Right? So you have these two serpents rising through your body, and then, as you're coming into that, highest state of cosmic awareness, it's uniting all your chakras, and then it surges up your spine and out your head chakra, right? Mm-hmm. So, but first it basically leaps out from your third eye chakra, pulls its head back in, then goes down, and then surges up to begin the next cycle. Fascinating. The house of the bee. It's no accident that bees are significant symbols of wisdom, fertility, and the sacred feminine. The geometric design of their honeycombs reflects the fabric of the universe as a dress or veil of the ancient Egyptian Netert Neith. And I'm going to go further into that because this veil concept is really, really powerful. And it's part of being birthed into the physical. Because it is the veil that contains us. They call it even, the wings of protection, but, it's protecting us, but it's also preventing us from experiencing the enlightenment from the galaxy, if you will. So it has a dual purpose. One is to contain, and one is to protect from those harsh, the harsh radiation from the galaxy, galactic radiation, but yet, that galactic radiation is only harmful if we think we're physical. Interesting. So Neith is the first and the prime creator of the universe and the great mother of the sun. emerging from pre-dynastic times. So she's ancient, ancient, ancient. Her temple in the Nile Delta at Sais was called the House of the Bee, and it was said that she wove the world into being on her loom. So she's also the master weaver. And all vibrating patterns of life and breath are fractally connected to the finely woven fabric of her womb. So here we have the Egyptian understanding of our fractal holographic reality. It's how we experience reality as this one powerful netter, Neith. So she's really hugely significant, and yet we never hear her name. It's always Isis this and Isis that. Sorry, I'm just obnoxious. But you know what I mean. Some of the most powerful goddesses are never talked about as much, even Sachet, and that's why I like to bring them forward so that we truly understand the whole dynamic of this pantheon of forces of nature. They weren't gods to be worshipped. They were forces of nature that relate to how we perceive reality, and provide so much information. So I can't talk about bees and the matrix, the womb that that is protecting us and holding us, and it's basically our home, without mentioning what's happening to the bees on the planet. I took this quote. A professor at Punjab University in India decided to test her conjecture that wireless technology might be responsible for colony collapse disorder in honeybees. She put cell phones in 2 of 4 hives and turned them on twice a day for 15 minutes at a time. That's not much, right? After 3 months, there was neither honey nor pollen nor brood nor bees in the 2 colonies with cell phones. She then decided to find out what was happening in the bees' hemolymph, which is what their blood is called. And she found that cellular respiration was brought almost to a standstill. After just 10 minutes of exposure to a cell phone, the bees practically could not metabolize sugars, fats, or proteins. Think about it.
Good God.
We also have magnetite. We are electromagnetic physical beings. So, when people say, no, we're not getting, that's all hogwash, we're not being damaged by cell towers and cell phones and things like that, think again. This is huge. And, if our bees and other animals and organic forms of life are failing now and getting sick, we've got to think about our womb. What are we doing to our womb, to our home, to Mother Nature itself? And we need to take responsibility and even protect ourselves.
I've got one of these damn things right out the window.
Yeah, well, they're everywhere. I can see one from my apartment. Thank goodness it's fairly far away. And I'll bring up again, I talk about him a lot in biogeometry, Durea, Dr. Ibrahim Karim. They are doing fabulous work, and they have tools for helping to negate the negative effects.
Right, exactly. So, this is not...
It's not the end of the world.
It's a zero-sum game.
Exactly.
We can have this technology and have it not be harmful at the same time.
Yes, and there are people on Earth aware and doing things that make a difference, and that's why I cannot talk about Dr. Karim enough. He's so important today, and I would definitely look into biogeometry if you are experiencing any side effects. I mean, personally, I turn off my Wi-Fi at night, every night, or I wake up feeling like a zombie. So that, yeah, there are tools, there are ways, look into them. It's not the end of the world, but yes, we do need to be aware and more cognizant of our technologies and what they're doing to our environment.
I have organite all over the apartment.
Yes, I know you do. I have a few. I think I have one next to my bed. But I do also work with the biogeometry tools, and I feel it does make a difference. I absolutely do. So yeah. So this is a beautiful artwork of Neith. I found it, and it's just so beautiful, by Lee LaWeaver, of all things, is her name. But it's Neith weaving, and the The quote here by Walter Russell is fantastic. And he says, that which man calls matter or substance has no existence whatsoever. You know, I keep saying it's all an illusion, right? So-called matter is but waves of the motion of light, electrically divided into opposed pairs, and then electrically conditioned and patterned into what we call various substances of matter. Briefly put, matter is but the motion of light, and motion is not substance, right? It's all an illusion, folks. It only appears to be. Take motion away, and there would not be even the appearance of any substance. The earth is spinning. Its spin at its axis creates a magnetic field, and the entire earth itself is spinning and spiraling through space in rotations with other planetary, you know, the rotation with the sun and the whole solar system with the center of the galaxy, and the galaxies rotating around each other. This is all what is the root of our perception of a physical reality, time and space itself.
The interaction of all these different magnetic fields.
Exactly. And when everything stops spinning, there is none. Just the
all the magnetic fields drop.
Yep. Just the primordial waters of nothing. No thing, none. They had the name for it. You know, where did we get our word nothing? No thing. It's none. So I've said this before, and I had a version of this slide up before, but here I include the name, the hieroglyphic name for Neith itself. And you can see that the part of the hieroglyph N is also the glyph for water in ancient Egypt. And they understood water to be energy in motion, right? So it's also energy in motion. That's what N is. And where do we get our word energy, right? N. And it's the first letter of the word Neith, right? And the T is polarity. And here we have the sine wave that shows us the first breath of polarity that gives us our perception of time and also, therefore, space, right? It's the movement of the light wave. So yeah, time is not an eternal constant, but a flexible principle that causes separation. Creation is ultimately motion, and therefore separation from source, from our heart, as a breath of light. This is the cosmic serpent we talked about before. All is waveform. This watery waveform is the illusory backdrop for our perception of reality, which is known in India as Maya, right? And in Egypt today, we still use this ancient word for water, or Maya, when we ask for a glass or bottle of water. You go to a restaurant, when you come to Egypt, all you have to do is say Maya, and they'll bring you a bottle of water. Well, hopefully, if they think you're going to pay for it. Anyway.
It's also the Hebrew word for water, maim.
Yeah.
Mayim,
yep.
maim.
There you go. Yep. And of course, the Hebrew language emerges out of Egypt. So we find many similarities between, you know, the hieroglyphics and the Hebrew language that grows out of it. The hieroglyphic for water is waveform, and it represents the phonetic consonant N, which is used to begin, as we said, our title for Neith. So we had this slide up before, and I told you I'd be repetitive because everything comes into play. This information is non-linear. So here we have again our swastika, which many feel is a negative symbol, but it really represents our spin, the spin, which is the heart of creation, right? We don't exist. We don't perceive a physical reality without the spin, and it all emerges from a center, which very soon we're going to talk about where that center is. It's quite fascinating. So yes, directional spin determines whether one side of a magnet will attract another. Opposite vortex spins attract, like spins repel. There we have it. Sort of like defining how we go through life. What we perceive as north and south poles are actually clockwise and counterclockwise vortex spins emitted by the magnet, and they create force fields. You know, and I say to people, what is gravity? And everybody, you know, thinks gravity is a force derived from matter. but I believe it's an attractive force. It's an electromagnetic attraction to our heart, to our center. And Walter Russell talks about this. I think we totally misunderstand gravity, and it's literally attraction back to our heart, you know. The matrix of the Taurus field is the mind, and the heart is that center, right? It's the heart of the matrix, and the energy around the center is the mind of the matrix. So Neith carries the bow and arrows, and people wonder, well, where, you know, she's an archer, you know, like the Roman god Diana, right? She shoots the arrows. Well, the arrows, as a symbol in ancient times, in many ancient cultures, represented beams of light, right? So there you have it. But if you look at the way she's holding that with her bow, with her arrows, and you have the lotus going in the center, you can also liken that to the axis of even the earth and the magnetic field around it.
Absolutely.
But what's even more, of course, and we've talked about this before, that when you cross any two currents, you create what? That center point is the portal, right? So the crossing of her arrows has a hugely profound significance. It's creating this amazing portal between two dual opposing fields of energy. And there we have our Taurus field. Yeah, I told you I'd go on to prove this. At least from my understanding, in my opinion. It is from this point at the center that a central axis for the formation of the toroidal field can emerge. So here you can see, and I love this. First of all, a scarf in Egypt in symbolism, when you see a scarf, if it's just hanging flat, that means stillness. And if it's moving, it's indicating movement. You know, how else are they going to indicate movement? What an interesting use of symbolism, right? So the scarf is moving, so we know that this figure is representing something that is moving. And I've showed this image before as well, the top image on the right of the Ouroboros, there's the serpent biting its tail, but inside is an hourglass.
With
right?
wings.
Exactly. So again, you know it's moving, right? Now imagine that as the Taurus field. Right? And it's an hourglass. And well, how do we use hourglasses? But we flip them when the time is up. This is really important because that's the flipping of the magnetic field, and everything shifts and changes. So this is a huge dynamic, and we know that the sun flips its magnetic field approximately every 11 years. It's why we all are attracted to the 11-11 dynamic for a full 22-year cycle. And the Earth itself, many believe it flips in every 12,000 years. And again, I'm not going to, do anything to prove that point right now, but think about the 12-12, and we do know that we have cyclical, global catastrophic events approximately every 12,000 years.
This is in the geologic record.
Yeah. And again, I'm a huge fan of Ben Davidson, Suspicious Observers, but there's many, many other researchers and astrophysicists out there speaking about this same thing. And also geophysicists, so yeah. So Neith is the womb of primordial waters of liquid light. We've said it before. The toroidal field is a donut-shaped energy field which illustrates how energy moves in its most balanced dynamic process. Each atom and everything on Earth is surrounded by its own energy field known as the torus. So that includes every one of our chakras has its own torus field, and our heart chakra is extending far from us. Right, so that is connected to everybody else's torus field, and so we are all connected. And what we project from our center is being projected into the rest of the world. If you're having a bad day and you're not happy about it, the rest of the world will feel it on some level, at least in your immediate environment. And if you choose to appreciate what you have and you send out waves of gratitude, appreciation, and joy, you are also raising the energetic level of everything around you as well. So it shows us that we do have accountability and responsibility if we want to project positive into the world. And there is an ultimate reaction, because what you project will ultimately be returned to you, bouncing off, everybody else's field.
Well, and
So
it's not just that on an individual level, but if we all understood and knew our role, we could, as Rory
raise
Duff explains,
exactly.
work
Exactly.
together to
Well, this
amplify
is the
this.
key. This is the most important. How do we shift the way the world is heading now? And we do it by collectively, like you just said, exactly, collectively shifting our attitude, eliminating fear. Fear and anger only bring us all down, hold us hostage. And when we let go of fear and anger and focus on appreciation, love, joy, we change, and we basically flip everything. And I think we really need a reversal right now. So yeah, definitely. So yeah, the torus field is a self-sustaining, balanced dynamic energy flow process consisting of a single axis and two vortices, as we've said. Energy passes through one vortex along the center of the axis and out the other vortex, wraps back around to the circumference, and renews by passing through the original vortex. So the Earth's torus is run through the center of the planet and creates our atmosphere. So it's interesting. Here's our womb that's basically creating our atmosphere, which is Shu and Tefnut. And didn't we say that Shu and Tefnut are born from Noon, right? The primordial. They come out of the primordial waters. Shu and Tefnut being air and water. The lioness, he's often portrayed as a lion. Tefnut means the spit of Nut. So again, it's explaining this whole pantheon of forces of nature which make up, our natural, it makes up everything, our perception of reality.
Right.
So yeah, so a birth in nature requires a crossing of opposites. This portal is a birthing place, right? And I've mentioned that none is a birthing box. So here we go. So this creation of the torus field from the center, where the duality emerges, this is what, this opening of the portal is what gives birth, again, to our perception of form, earth, air, water, and fire. Schwaller de Lubitz introduced a concept that he called the principle of the crossing, relating to the crossing of two lines. According to Robert Lahr, in the translator's foreword to Schwaller's Temple and Man, some of us have actually read through this, an amazing book. He says this crossing was not a sterile, mental, numerical manipulation, but a symbol for the process by which things enter into corporeal existence. There we go. All birth into nature required a crossing of opposites. It can be a crossing of vertical and horizontal lines, which gave birth to the square, birthing box, the first measurable surface, or male and female giving birth to a new individual, or warp and weft creating a fabric, or light and darkness giving birth to tangible forms, or matter and spirit giving birth to life itself. So again, I'm not making this stuff up. When I start researching all these things, I'm finding that this is known. These concepts are known if you actually, open your mind and your eyes to see. It's really right before our eyes, right?
Hidden in plain sight.
Hidden in plain sight. And we think they're worshiping these funny looking, sometimes anthropomorphic or, all different kinds of figures. And it's not about worship. It's about reverence for the forces of nature. And here we have the symbol of Neith actually inserted into the torus field. And you can see where it all works. She is the creative force that exists as active life forms. So she's the gateway between the worlds of materiality and non-materiality. And like Wepawat, remember he's the white wolf, right?
Mm-hmm.
The white jackal, referred to as, she was also referred to as the opener of ways in pre-dynastic and early dynastic times. So yeah, she's there at the birth of a physical reality. As the fabric of reality of this oscillating universe, Neith is responsible for our first perception of form as matter. She holds the seeds of forms within her garment or veil of forgetfulness that exists in all of the electromagnetic fields that surround all life forms in spinning motion. Fractal. Must these spinning bodies be stilled in order for the veil to drop and the truths to be revealed? Now, that's a question we're going to explore at great length in upcoming presentations. But it also comes into play when you think about what's happening right now. Within the last 100 years or so, our Earth's magnetic field has been weakening exponentially. Weakened about 10% up until recently, and maybe in the last decade or 2 decades, it's weakened now to 20% of what it was like 100, 120 years ago. That's huge. 20% weaker, 1/5 of what it was. And how does that affect us? All things we are going to be talking about at great length. So yeah, Neith is consciousness. We've talked about this before as well, that our consciousness doesn't exist in our brain. It actually exists in the magnetic field that's generated from within. And Hue and Sa, Hue being sound and Sa being perception, they go hand in hand. And that's why you always find them associated with each other. The scientists struggle with the probability that consciousness is tied into the rhythm of the fabric of the universe. Here we go. However, human beings could be transformed by this knowledge. Well, if people really understood how tightly connected our conscious perception of what's happening and our level of consciousness is connected to the magnetic fields of the Earth and the Sun and the galaxy itself, we would again be more responsible for what, for how we treat ourselves, each other, and our environment. To understand this, as the ancients did, is to recognize that when we perceive the patterns and cycles of vibrating waveforms and how they breathe out into fractal versions of the same patterns, it enables us to learn how to navigate and even harness the currents in order to achieve harmonic resonance in any given moment. So here again, we've talked about emotions and feelings, but a lot of people today are doing work in utilizing sound and frequency to create harmonic resonance in many different fields. And the ancients were doing it as well. They had, sound healing techniques, frequency. They used frequency. In the future, we'll talk again about the sound healing hospital at Saqqara, where they harness the forces of nature to construct a building in a specific spot to harness frequency in order to heal their physical body, minds, and spirits. This is so, and it's important, groundbreaking science today, that we don't require synthetic drugs to heal ourselves, that we have the tools not only within us, but within, altering frequency, that we exist in.
It's like explosive technology versus implosive also,
Yes.
now we're using drugs in surgery when we should be using sound and light.
Exactly. And it's how the ancients, it's what they used. These were their survival techniques as we began to fall into form. And we've grown so far from that now, we can't even remember. But it's coming back, which is also incredibly exciting and significant, because this is one of those pivotal moments when everything's about to flip. So yeah, definitely, Allan. So from Bruce Lipton, and those of you familiar with him, I think he's most famous for his biology of life and his healing techniques as well. And he says this: the brain generates electric signals, and if I put an EEG wires on your head, you can see the brain activity printing out, right? Okay. There is another device called a magnetoencephalograph where the probe doesn't touch the head, but that device reads your brain activity with a probe outside of your head, right? And you might say, wait, then my thoughts aren't contained in my head. And I'd say, that's right. The concept is your brain is acting as a tuning fork, and the broadcast from your brain is not located in your head. We were just talking about this. So you're like a radio station. So in effect, you are always broadcasting. Again, so significant to know this. We're not just in our own little world. We are always affecting everybody else's world, especially within our immediate, vicinity. So if we can bring up the few people in our general vicinity, and they can raise up the people in theirs, one by one, it can change. You can change the world. And here's Isis and Nebhet. This is, again, for me, very mind-blowing because together they are aspects of Neith, the net, and they represent this two sides of the Taurus field, because you have this duality going on in the Taurus field. And Isis, again, associated with magic, right? She's known to be the great magician. Well, our word magic derives from magnetic. The magician, I showed you the picture of Heka, or he harnesses the current. Heka is magic, right? He's harnessing the currency. And here you see Nebhet's on the far left and Isis with the throne. And the two represent the Taurus field that is, basically spinning around Osiris, who is the earth, right? He's us in a physical perception of reality. So again, they are also the veil of forgetfulness. Isis, there's a whole, Madame Blavatsky wrote a book called Isis Unveiled, to reveal the hidden mysteries. And this veil does protect us, as I said, from the galactic radiation, but it also prevents us from being enlightened by that same, cosmic light. So what happens when the magnetic field isn't there? What if it goes down? Just interesting concepts we're going to really go into in the future. So Manly P. Hall says this: she reveals her wisdom not only to the tried and initiated few who have earned the right to enter her sacred presence, tear from the veiled figure of nature its shroud of obscurity and stand face to face with the divine reality. He's saying right there, if you can get rid of those wings, you will see the truth of who we are and what this is all about. All the questions we all have. Why am I here? Why was I born? What is this, right? It can all happen in an instant when we stop breathing, when the earth stops breathing, and we have a moment of silence, and again, think about that 7-day week we talked about in the last presentation, and we have Monday through, Monday through Thursday, and then the world's major religions choose Friday. Friday is the holiday here for Islam. Saturday is the Hebrew holiday, the Jewish holiday rather, and Sunday is the Christian holiday or day of rest, right? There are 6 days that God creates the world, and then a day of rest, a day of silence, just like that great yogic breath. And that silence comes when the earth stops spinning, when we stop spinning, when we meditate and go within. And what a powerful moment that can be if we learn how to harness it. So in the last presentation, we also talked about a man I met in Australia called Robert Pope. And I want to bring this back again because I'm going to introduce something in the next slide that I find fascinating. So he talks about the sphenoid bone. He introduced me to the sphenoid bone when I was there. He blew me away with so much knowledge that he had. Um, and the sphenoid bone is responsible for the evolution of mankind. And it works with sound and vibration. I'll read this again for those that didn't see the last presentation. The sphenoid resembles a bat or owl, or a winged scarab, if you will. The tips of the greater wings reach out to the temples. And again, why do we call them temples, right? On each side of the head. When Om, or well, the spelling Om, is chanted during meditation, these wings start to vibrate or flap. That in turn causes the pineal and the pituitary glands to start interacting in the center of the brain. And an electromagnetic pulse occurs between the two. And this energy helps to raise consciousness, right? It's incredible. And this is right there, you know, behind our sinuses, in our head, and it's such, again, such a powerful understanding.
It's like the shelf that your brain is sitting on.
Exactly. It's so huge, but listen to this, because I found this online. It's not there anymore, sadly, so I can't give you a link. He had written a paper, and I grabbed this quote from it because it sparked my interest. He says an electromagnetic motor drives the tail of the sperm, and we're talking about the male sperm, to the ovum. Upon entering, it's transformed by the feminine electromagnetic field in the cellular centriole. So here we have that feminine, right? The same idea. These wings fluttering or whatever. The centriole energizes the first bone created in the embryo, which is the sphenoid. So the sphenoid bone vibrates with the seashell golden mean design of cochlea. So it's already, it's going to be vibrating in a sacred geometric pattern, which is a divine and incredibly significant energetic pattern of life itself. And it's using the same life energy forces as those discovered by their art center. He worked for this art center during the 1980s. And I had said this in the last presentation. He created with a software engineer a software program that took them back in time to when this particular golden mean was developed or created on Earth. And you could even relate it to a solar burst, a solar nova that came out of the Pleiades. So are we somehow, you hear many people say we're star seeds, but are they talking about we're star seeded from huge light bursts from stars in our galaxy? What an interesting interactive program that we or matrix, or just, to me it's all just divinely amazing. It doesn't have to be aliens coming down and playing with our DNA. It can be something so, I think, far more amazing that a supernova from a star, huge light waves hit the earth and change DNA itself naturally. Yes, because that's the natural patterns of life, right? It all starts, with that single heart that breathes out into all these different aspects that gets us to the point we're at even now. So he goes on to say, this then creates the electromagnetic functioning responsible for evolving consciousness. Wow. So as has been derived from the Greek music of the spheres concept by the Texas University Science, whatever. You can read on, as it's explained in his minute detail within his book entitled Interference, if you want to look it up. But there we go. We get back to the music of the spheres all being created, at this initial moment of birth. Wow. Just absolutely beautiful. And so it's telling us electromagnetic breath of life is happening in sacred geometric patterns. And this is why we're so attracted to this and why they're so significant. And how do we find that harmonic resonance? But by staying with, breathing and dancing rhythmically with the sacred geometric patterns of nature itself. See, this is the key. This is what the ancients worldwide knew. You know, dance with the patterns of nature. You know, they did it in the stone circles all over the world. They come out at night. They would come out at night and dance. You talk about the swan dancing, but it had to do with the feminine energy, dancing within the stone circles under the full moon. Now, I'm giving you an imagery here, but it's beautiful to think about. You know, we want to be in harmonic resonance with nature, and that brings us vibrant health.
Hmm.
And then I thought I'd put a little in here about fractal patterning, because here's our sperm, right, entering the egg, and it's the cosmic serpent, right? And so I take you back to the image of Nut, right, the watery waveform of the heavens, giving birth to physical form, you know, as light waves giving birth, right? That's the waves of the sun. You know, Nut is giving birth to the sun, and the light waves, right, are giving birth to the face of form as Hathor, right? It's just incredible. And then to the side of those light waves, you see the lotus on the bark with the serpent, right? That cosmic serpent coming down is almost a spark of life, right? Light, spirit, entering the physical form. What a powerful moment. And then we have our image of the famous light bulb from the crypt, and it's birthing from the lotus bulb, right? The flower, right? That first breath into a lotus bulb, right? Our container that holds the perception of our reality, right? We're born into, and that container represents Nut. She surrounds us as the Milky Way, as the cosmic waters of our heavens, right? We're being born into that container, which is the veil that covers us, you know, and when we believe in a physical form, that we believe we are bodies. So here we see, you know, the dynamic in all these beautiful different ways. And it is a fractal patterning on Earth. Isn't this mind-boggling? So from Isabel Pastor Guzman, from Tuning into the Earth's Natural Rhythm, she states, the Earth behaves like a gigantic electric circuit. Its electromagnetic field surrounds and protects all living things with a natural frequency pulsation of 7.83 hertz on average. We've heard of this, and it's the so-called Schumann resonance, named after physicist Dr. Winfried Otto Schumann, who predicted it mathematically in 1952. This frequency circulates in the cavity bounded by the Earth's surface and the ionosphere surrounding the Earth at a distance of about 60 miles. Each space filled with an electrical tension created by the clashing of the ionosphere, which is positively charged by the sun or solar winds, and the Earth's surface, which carries a negative charge. We can think of it like the Earth's pulse or heartbeat. So I bring this up because this is so hugely important. So many people today are even, I notice on social media, are tracking the Schumann resonance because it does shift from time to time, and especially when the sun's activity, the solar winds are super active. So when we're getting more radiation from the sun, we'll see some huge spikes or all kinds of funky stuff happening to the Schumann resonance. But what's really fascinating is we as human beings, I think, we have to also resonate with the Earth itself. So we've come into this becomes our own harmonic resonance within the 7.83. So you can think of it as when things go out of whack, it's definitely going to affect us. And we're always going to want to come back to that, you know, that lovely feeling of the 7.83 hertz. And then you think about things that can be affecting that, and you realize that, wow, you know, we need to be maybe more aware of how these solar flares and solar events happening can affect how we're feeling, even our health. Now, interesting, food for thought, and here's where we get a little bit more into that. Interestingly, 7.83 hertz is also the human brain's average alpha frequency in electroencephalography. Wow. I probably didn't pronounce that right.
Close enough.
Thanks. Among the five main categories of brain waves, alpha waves, which stand in the middle of the scale, induce relaxation, but not quite meditation, a state where we begin to tap into the wealth of creativity that lies just below our conscious awareness. So, that's one way to look at it. But what's interesting is this experiment. It's an experiment in 2011 by Dr. Luc Montaigne, fundamentally changed our understanding of how life works. Montaigne removed all DNA from test tubes filled with water samples and exposed them to the 7.83 frequency. The water, which had no DNA, produced new molecules, even though no life was present. Fascinating. Montaigne theorized, yes, exactly. He theorized that our DNA communicates via the invisible electromagnetic field that surrounds our living Earth and which we are all connected to. The implications of this research are mind-blowing because it seems that the electromagnetic frequency of the Earth not only has a hand in sustaining life here on our planet, but also participates in creating it.
And spontaneously creating it. Wow.
So what did we say Neith is doing? She is the great creator. She is the great mother, and she is the fabric of our reality, right? And we are interacting with it. Wow.
Amazing.
So yeah, everything they tell us, we see all these memes on social media, and we hear it and we say, oh yeah, right, about our connection to all that is, and
all the positive thinking and love and light.
Yeah, exactly. But understanding it at a gut, more scientific, in a way, what we're trying to do here is marry science and spirituality. And when you marry the two, you get a much greater depth of understanding of every aspect of everything. Like I said, alchemy is taking a look at everything from every direction. And for me, proving everything scientifically, I was brought up loving science and math and, all, the analytical side of me, but I'm also an artist and intuitive and creative and very intuitive. So I would intuit things. And this is how I do my research here. I intuit everything, or it comes to me in dream form or in the middle of the night or visions, even at the sites. But then I have to go research and figure it out scientifically and analytically. And that's why I present it in both ways to everyone else. I didn't make this stuff up. I saw it, I felt it, it came to me maybe, but then I actually went forward and because I had to prove it to myself. Fascinating. So she goes on to say, it's possible that the Schumann resonance signals the natural electromagnetic patterns of the Earth, act like a tuning fork, and not just for the biological oscillators of the brain, but for all processes of life. Wow.
Okay, a couple episodes ago we talked about HARP, bouncing radio waves off the ionosphere. Can they change the Schumann resonance with HARP?
All really good questions. And we're going to go into HARP even in greater detail in a future presentation not too far away. But yeah, they can affect everything. And there's major studies that have been done to show how different world events affect population emotionally, physically, mentally, but also how this bouncing of waveform of this whole HARP energy, the satellite array that can play with frequency, can also affect the emotional state of being. There are those that even have projected that it's possible that sometimes that happens before a major world event. And so it leaves us already primed to be in a state of fear or anger, and then the event happens and everything is amplified. So many different ways to look at it, so many different possibilities, but being aware and open-minded makes us more able to handle things if we understand how the way and attitude in which we handle things makes an entirely different approach to what happens in the outcome. If we affect the outcome, then it certainly makes a whole lot of sense for us to learn how to bring ourselves back into harmonic resonance and not be swayed by our emotions in situations like that.
Right.
So yeah, so this is really cool too. So what happens when the wings come down? We sort of talked about that a little bit. Professor R. Weaver from the Max Planck Institute for Behavioral Physiology in Erlangen-Endex built an underground bunker that completely screened out magnetic fields. Okay. Between 1964 and 1989, this bunker was used to conduct 418 studies in 447 human volunteers. Student volunteers lived for 4 weeks in this hermetically closed environment. Professor Weaver observed that the students' circadian rhythms diverged and that they suffered emotional distress and migraine headaches. Since they were young and healthy, no serious health conditions appeared. But older people or people with a weak immune system would have probably had a different response. This is powerful information. After only a brief exposure to 7.83 hertz, again, the frequency which had been taken away, the volunteers' health stabilized again. The first astronauts and cosmonauts who went out into space were no longer exposed to the Schumann resonance waves reported similar symptoms. So think about that. You know, if the magnetic field even shifts or changes, we're affected. But what would happen if it actually came down, if the Earth stopped spinning? You know, and I've heard from many different people, you know, scientists will say, well, we can't survive it, and this would happen, and that would happen. And there's that way to look at it. And I say, hey, if we remember we're not our physical bodies, then anything, you know, and we're going to discuss that at great length in in another presentation. But as it's weakening, you know, and I've just said it's weakened 20%. What's happening to us when the sun's activity picks up and we're hit by these, you know, solar flares, and some of them stronger than others? What's happening to our sense of well-being, our, you know, mental, physical, and spiritual health? What's happening to us? And would it behoove us in this moment in time to really work on improving our state of health? To be at our most optimum state of health that we possibly can be in order to, you know, to, you know, fare as best as we can to maintain our health during the, you know, these, whatever these times have in store for us. Just again, food for thought. You know, they've proven we're affected by these changes, and these changes are occurring. And it can be causing a myriad of symptoms. And if you look up the symptoms of radiation, solar radiation, it is affecting our heart and our lungs. And well, think about that, folks. What's been happening the past few years? And how is the sun either amplifying this, you know, the radiation, or even causing some of these symptoms that we're experiencing? So again, you know, biogeometry, Dr. Ibrahim Kareem, look for ways, do the best you can for your health in these times. So here is a beautiful image of a Native American weaver. And, you know, as I said, Neith was related to the weaver as well. And this comes from, this quote is from Chief Seattle in 1854. Humankind has not woven the web of life. We are but one thread within it. Whatever we do to the web, we do to ourselves. All things are bound together. All things connect. You know, this is not new information. It's just, you know, just, again, me trying to drive a point home. It's so important that we are cognizant of our effect on our environment. You know, even a smile, since if somebody's in a bad or having a bad day, can change, you know, their mood. And just the little things that we do can make a difference. The artwork, by the way, is done by Grandmother's Spider Art by Amethyst Moonsong. So yeah, Neith was also associated with spiders, relating to her function as a spinner and weaver of destiny. In this aspect, she can be equated with the Babylonian Ishtar, the Greek goddess Arachne, of course, known later by the Romans as Minerva, the goddess of wisdom. Right? The Hopi and Navajo portrayed the spider grandmother in this role as a creative force of nature. In the Hopi creation myth, spider grandmother as Koki Angwuti imagines the world into existence through the conscious weaving of her webs. You know, how beautiful. And, you know, I also, this gives me the chance to point out again that all of these pantheons of gods and goddesses, they are forces of nature. This is, you know, we misunderstand it because of the way we look at the world. You know, we go to church, we worship to a God. Some of us do in so many different world religions. But the ancients, these pantheons of gods, these gods were revered for what they represented as aspects of ourself, aspects of our natural world,
Right.
and aspects of the cosmos.
The animal forms they took were indicative of the fractal pattern that they were representing, that we could see plainly on Earth.
Exactly. You know, nature's patterns, you know, what does the spider weave but these beautiful sacred geometric designs, right?
What does the lion represent? What does the hippo represent? All of these things.
Exactly. And when they studied them, they didn't study them like we do in school. And we just, you know, we know their habitat. We know the lion's called the king of the jungle. And, you know, we might get a little in depth, but they understood the anatomy. They understood every aspect of what this animal, bird, insect was capable of, and what its patterns were, and its
behavior and
exactly. This is such a depth of knowing, and we tend to do things totally at face value. We've lost our depth, if you will. And I hate to make blanket statements. I mean, you know, there are so many of us that do delve deeper. But, you know, and this is why I feel it's so important to look beyond the obvious, because there's so much hidden. And so the Omega embodies complete gnosis, the unified field and or 0 point, which expresses as infinite potentiality. It's possible to absolutely do and create anything in this perception of reality. We have been programmed to think we are not capable, that we are powerless, but the truth is we've forgotten how powerful we really are. Neith was associated with the waters of Nun that preceded creation, and like Hathor, she is the Alpha and Omega. The Alpha, or seed of potentiality, is the great central source of light at our center, and the eternally breathing fields of energy that project from its womb, the Omega. The Omega is the garment from which time emerges. Infinity and timelessness are the womb out of which a linear chronological unfolding emerges. And this is what I've been showing you with the images of Hathor and Neith giving birth to the face of Hathor as form. And I said it before, John Anthony West once said that Hathor is the womb of time, you know, and even Dendera, her temple, is the womb of time. It holds all the answers to the mysteries of the universe. It's incredible. All is connected, all is eternally expanding and contracting, is a great yogic breath. And on a quantum level, time runs in both directions and pauses for a moment before it reverses. Like that hourglass. Can't be any other way, folks. So Neith was the ancient goddess of the beginning, the beyond, and the end. Metaphysical was early conceived as a waterway of the heavens, but later she came to be equated with the primeval waters from which Ra emerged. This earned her the epithet Mother of Ra. Her name means the great flood, right? And of course, Metaphysical is related, of course, to Neith. It's a form of Neith. So her name means the great flood. Well, interesting, because what do we have at some of these global catastrophic moments but how many great flood stories do we have? She is the beginning, the beyond, and the end. And here we have it, Neith in her form as Metaphysical, was the great cow of heaven. She creates, utilizing her powers as air and light, permeating the inert and void qualities of none in the androgynous fashion to make living formed matter, matter from light waves, right? Matter exists as experienced by human beings as the known universe. This is Catherine Griffiths Greenberg who says this. But it's the same thing we've been saying. And this beautiful image, here she is, the opener of ways. She's right there on her path of watery waveform, light waveform. And you see the eye here of consciousness. Consciousness is right there at the first breath. So here we have, I love this just because it's showing the different dimensions of perception. And we begin, with this one-dimensional point, right? The center, the heart of all beingness, right? And it's that point of singularity, and it's where infinite knowing is, gnosis. This is gnosis, right? It happens in a moment of silence, no movement, no breath, no color. It just is. And then it breathes out into duality, the two dimensions. And there you see the yin-yang pattern, right? Contained, right? Within that ball of energy. And this starts to move and spiral and breathe as this torus field, right? In 3 dimensions. And this is when gnosis becomes veiled. Our knowing becomes veiled by this torus field after the spin. And then 4 dimensions? What next, folks? What are we? It almost looks like you're within something, looking out, and what an amazing, can you imagine what it would feel like to be in a living, breathing world, but looking from the heart instead of the mind? A whole different way of seeing the world. And again, something we're going to talk about in the future. So, secret knowledge lost can be reclaimed. Neith weaves the ultimate fractal and holographic pattern of life as an incredible exhalation and inhalation of breath of divine light. It can't be any other way. Time is the illusion. How we experience it is always of our own choosing. The cycles will play themselves out despite those choices. Learn how to navigate the currents of her threads, and you can achieve harmonic and resonant bliss in any given moment. We choose. We always choose. We are light beings, and we emit light. We said that before. Hakeem used to say it. I am the light, right? Your brain gives off more light when you imagine light. Electricity and light are really 2 sides of the same thing. According to Michael Claridge, our bodies emit more light in the summer months and grow dimmer during the winter. Interesting. Think about that. Well, remember we said that there are 4 seasons to a year, which he's describing, and 4 seasons to a great year. What happens if our light grows dimmer when we fall into form, and it gets brighter when we rise into non-materiality again? How much do our bodies and our conscious perception shift and change over the course of that great year or procession of the equinoxes? Things to think about as we move forward, because we will talk about it. The reversal is shown in symbolism everywhere. You just have to have eyes to see it. Osiris, you see his imagery on the walls, the resurrection scenes. And it never is him just coming off the bier, right? The bier being the bed, his deathbed. He doesn't just rise at the resurrection. He has to turn over, right? Horus tells him, turn over and rise. And he is, what did we say he was? The land. He's the earth. And again, I'm going to bring this up again, over and over again, because it is so profoundly important. He must experience a reversal of charge and direction in order to begin his metamorphosis. This is what we all want, folks. We need to change even just our perception of reality. We need to change our attitudes and the way we look at the world. Osiris must turn over on his stomach before he can rise from the dead the symbolic state during the night cycle. In the above images, Osiris turns over on his belly and the wings of Isis, as the Earth's magnetic field, are lowered, while Osiris is presented with the gift of renewed life before he can enter the next cycle and renewed perception of reality. So what's happening on Earth? Our magnetic field is weakening. What happens if it stops and flips? We begin again in a whole new, an amazing, incredible cycle of rising into bliss. What a thought, right?
Wow.
And what is bliss but Un? And this wonderful image shows the erect jet pillar, the spine of Osiris, next to two Tet symbols. And those Tet symbols, Tet being the Ankh with the wings down, and the wings being, what did we say, the magnetic field. So the wings, the arms come down, right? And we have complete balance. That's, you see the eyes, you can barely see it, the eyes at the top of the Jed, that is Osiris, right, at his highest state of being, Gnosis, right? And the crowns on those two Tet symbols are Isis and Nephet.
They are, aren't they?
It can't be more evident. It's telling us this is how it works, folks. Stop spinning. Stop the chaos. Silence, right? Come back to our center. Balance. And everything begins again with gnosis, with knowing from the heart.
Un is shadowless consciousness, you said.
Yes, 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 yes. Un is the highest state of consciousness, according to Hakim. And it was the name of Heliopolis. I love this, by the way. This meme is bringing, if you watch, it's bringing the chakras together to become one, right? And then everything explodes. I'm not saying this is exactly what happens, but it's beautiful. Inhaling back to center. So yeah, so much knowing within the symbolism. And what we've done in this presentation is just introduce some really profound concepts that are going to be integral to understanding where we're going next. It's just
teaching you how to read the symbols.
Yes, exactly. This is just the foundational information. We are going to go so much deeper and hopefully blow your minds and change your perception and change your world, make your world brighter. That's the idea, right?
Well, thank you again, everybody, for joining us. Once again, our website is horusrising.com.
Oh, you know what we were going to say? In the future, you might have so many questions, and we haven't really talked about how you can ask your questions. If you leave your questions in the commentary underneath the YouTube video, we will get to addressing them either in a future presentation or I've been known to go on and answer questions as they're asked. When I have the time, I will definitely do that. So don't be afraid to write your questions in the commentary, and we can, we definitely can bring them up in the future.
Excellent. And please remember to like, share, and subscribe.
Yeah.
And we'll talk to you guys very soon. Thanks, Patricia.
Thank you, Allan.